Good evening, folks. This is Deb Delapiana, and this is yet another Shut the Fuck Up. So I don't know if anybody's been, following all the stuff going on with, the Texas border and Greg Abbott. And, as you well know, we have a case in front of the Supreme Court coming up about Donald Trump's ballot eligibility. But there's a common theme now running through the fascist MAGA GOP. And that is that whenever there's a Supreme Court ruling that the right wing doesn't like, we can just ignore them. So Chip Roy, who's a representative in the great state of Texas, suggested last week that Greg Abbott can just ignore the Supreme Court. Just pretend that they didn't make any ruling at all. And Greg Abbott has done that to some degree. They demanded that he take down the wire that can potentially be catastrophic and fatal for people trying to cross the border. The idea here is not to kill people, although that's what Greg Abbott probably had in mind when he let those people drown in the Rio Grande. But he seems to be building new barriers to put up, right? So Chip Roy says that they can ignore the Supreme Court. Now, we had J.D. Vance on with George Stephanopoulos the other day, making the assertion that whatever the ruling is that the Supreme Court comes up with on his immunity and on, his eligibility for the ballot, that Donald Trump can just ignore the Supreme Court. We can just ignore him. This, by the way, is the Supreme Court that they built. They actually built this extreme right-wing Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. So I'm thinking here that since they can ignore the Supreme Court, that Joe Biden can ignore the Supreme Court. Why don't we just open up all the abortion clinics again? Because if the Supreme Court ruling isn't good enough for them, then the fucking Supreme Court ruling on Roe v. Wade isn't good enough for us. It doesn't work for women at all. But see, that's the thing about the Republicans. What they will tell you is that what the rulings on their stuff are unjust. So they can ignore it. But the rulings that oppress the people, like the voting stuff and the abortion issue, that stuff they have to follow. We have to follow that because it's not their stuff, okay? So this is where we are in America right now. We have a bunch of legislators who are already fascists, but now they are out there in the public venue suggesting that we can just ignore the Supreme Court, that they can just do whatever the fuck they want, regardless of the fact that that is the highest court in the land, and it is their job to interpret the Constitution and hand down decisions based on the Constitution. Let me clarify a couple of things here. The Supreme Court is in their pocket. And it's amazing to me that we have a party that stacked the court thinking that every single ruling was going to go their way. That just proves that what they were trying to create was an arm that would legalize every criminal thing that they have done since electing Donald Trump. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, right? So the notion that the Supreme Court will give Donald Trump immunity as president from everything, I hope people understand that if that actually is the ruling, that means every president can do whatever they want with no repercussion at all. I would hope the Supreme Court would have more sense than that. But that's actually not the point of this video. The point is the GOP will take and twist whatever they can Now they can ignore the Supreme Court. And I will say one other thing before I close out this video. There is only one person I have seen in the mainstream media that actually had the balls to shut down a GOP senator on his show, and that was George Stephanopoulos, who just blatantly and completely cut off J.D. Vance and said, "Thanks for stopping by. Goodbye." The news media, as an adjunct to this video, should be exposing these people for what they are, not giving them a venue to spew their version of what the law is versus the reality of what the law is. Their version of what the truth is versus what the real truth is. The mainstream media needs to step up to the plate like George Stephanopoulos did the other day and stop giving these cretins any kind of credibility. We are on the precipice of fascism and authoritarian rule. Anybody who doesn't believe November is about democracy is dreaming. It is not about the border. It is not about rights. It is not about the economy. It is not about climate change, because none of those things will be addressed under fascism. Under fascism, corporations will rule. The wealthy will be in charge. And the government will not function with public servants in their place, but they will be replaced with people who can profess loyalty to Donald Trump. And Donald Trump and the Republican Party, if they are given power, will not leave. They are prepared to ignore the Supreme Court. They are sticking this right in your face right now. They are telling you exactly what their plans are, and they are telling you exactly who they are. Think about it. I will talk to you later.